Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a refret and refinish. I've never done one of these before. I've always wanted to, and I've always been interested in the process, and I've wanted to put my brain to the test, I guess. So I also wanted to see if it's worth doing it yourself versus getting a professional to do it. So all the tools that I use in this video and the materials added up cost around $1,000 Australian versus maybe $400 to $600 to get a professional to refret your guitar here. That's using one of the better people in Sydney. The other people around here don't necessarily do the best job. I've had a lot of guitars refret in my life, maybe 3 or 4, and I've enjoyed the results sometimes, but a lot of the times you can't get the fret wire you want, or they don't do it exactly to your taste. Some people I've found now that I really like do it really well, and they're worth going to, but I just really wanted to see if I could do it myself and leave the guitar with the preferences I like, I guess. So the neck we're doing today is my 1962 reissue Jaguar neck. It developed a ski jump towards like after the 12th fret, so the wood kind of bumped up from the 12th fret onwards, making all the frets from 12 and onwards kind of fret out or buzz quite a lot. I had it leveled once by someone, and he did a fantastic job, and he said to me that there's no point there's not much point working on this in the future. You'll have to get like a whole refret and sand and stuff. You may as well just buy a new neck. So I did that. I bought a new neck, a Mustang neck, and put it on, and I've been using that ever since. But it's going to make for a perfect practice neck for me for today's purposes. So let's see how we get on. So you've probably been seeing me get started in the background here. I've never done anything like this before. I can do most like setup related things with a guitar, but I haven't done anything with the wood or the frets before. So I've watched countless videos. Mike Adams is a great source of knowledge, an offset genius. He has a video on refretting, and that's where I kind of got all of my inspiration from to give this a big go. So I've completely loosened the truss rod because at the end of the process I want to have a complete flat level fretboard with the truss rod loose, so that if once we put strings on, we can just tighten the truss rod ever so slightly to get it straight. I like the fretboard quite straight when I have everything strung up. So you saw me taking out the frets earlier. I was just rubbing on a bit of water and using a soldering iron to heat up the fret with the idea of melting some of that super glue holding the fret in, and then I slowly just work the fret out of the slot with the fret cutter. And then you saw me tape up the guitar, preparing it for sanding, just so that you don't accidentally scuff up any of the neck or whatnot. So I was just using a bit of masking tape, sticking it to myself, and then sticking it to the board so that it got rid of some of that sticky residue. So I've checked whether the fretboard is flat with the straight edge, and it's not. It's got all that raised bit after the 12th fret. Just using 220 grit sandpaper on the sanding beam there to start the process of radiusing the neck and leveling it a bit better. I will move my way up to 400 later on, but we'll see how we go. It's still there a little bit, so we're getting closer, which is good. I don't have a fret saw, so I don't know what I'm going to do once I've finished doing all this, but we'll figure that out as we go. Using the rosewood dust so I can use it later for the fret ends, if I choose to hide the fret ends. So I've got it to a point where it's level with the truss rod engaged. So I'm going to just go a little bit more so that it might, so I think I got rid of the ski jump, you know, like the big hump at the end here. But I might just go a little bit more so that when I loosen the truss rod, it's still straight. So that when I put strings on, I can tighten the truss rod just a little and have a nice neck with like 25% tension, you know, instead of like cranked all the way like it was before. So let's see if we can do that. My bag of rosewood dust is filling up quite nicely. So I've sanded it down, and the truss rod's loose. As you can see, it's poking out the end there. And if we put the straight edge on, there's like the tiniest bit of relief from like 1 to 9. So I think we've done a pretty good job. So if I just tighten it a little bit, it should be good to go. So the next step is my tang depth. So I've written on this piece of paper like a big black line for how deep the tang is. So I'm going to clean up these with a tiny little toothpick file, and then I'm going to see if they're deep enough for my frets. If they're not, I'm going to have to probably buy a fret saw, which I didn't think about before purchasing all this sort of stuff. So yeah, see you back here in a bit. So as I was alluding to there, I ended up needing to get a fret saw, which took about 4 to 5 weeks to come from StewMac in America. But once I got that, it made it a lot easier, as you'll see coming up. So as you can see here with the straight edge, now we have just a faint little bit of relief in the neck, and here's it full of oil and looking all pretty. Probably didn't need to oil it, but you know, I just wanted to do it to make it look pretty. So while the fret saw was coming, I decided that I'd give relicing the back of a guitar neck a go, which I don't know, everyone is a bit different about whether they like it or not like it. I just wanted to see if I could do it purely from like an artistic perspective. Like I always see custom shop guitars with their worn necks and stuff, and I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. Similar to this whole refretting process, I guess. So I'm just sanding the back of the neck here with some 220 grit sandpaper just to start the process of getting rid of that nitrocellulose lacquer and getting the wear in the right place. Yeah, I might go a bit further and then like fade it in, I guess. I don't know. And yeah, like pentatonic sort of thing over here. I don't really play up here very often, so I thought he would be a bit more realistic. Alrighty, so I've done as much wear as I think I want to do. You know, so this is up to wear, again, G and C and stuff. I might do more, I don't know. And then I don't really play up very high very often, so I thought if I do just a little bit around here, just to make it more unique to me. So I'm going to wet it and then use this 400 sandpaper on it just to get rid of any of the high fibers, and then I'm going to put some steel wool in vinegar, which has been left there for a while, to stain the wood and see what happens. If it looks good, I will keep going. If it looks bad, I might sand a bit more of the finish away here, but we'll see what happens. So I've sanded it down. I've used the 400 grit sandpaper to make it smooth, and then I've put a coat of vinegar and steel wool mixture on it. So I left steel wool in this jar with some vinegar, like half full maybe, and then I left it there for a few weeks, and then I've taken the steel wool out and added some more vinegar and mixed it up and just applied it on a rag and rubbed it in. It gives it a bit more of a brown look here. I want it to be slightly darker or slightly more natural, so I added some coffee ground and red wine. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, before the final coat of the beeswax, this is what it looks like. Cool. So it's a combination of sanding, some steel wool, coffee and red wine in a jar with vinegar, and then finishing it off with some of this feed and wax stuff, which is also the same stuff I use on the fretboard. It's great stuff. It smells really yummy too. Now it's dry, running it through my hands. You can't even feel the transition, which is kind of cool. So, still feels kind of like a nitro finish, but just a little bit smoother. You know, even this doesn't feel like bare wood, which is really nice. I don't like bare wood feel, but I like this this beeswax feel. It's really nice. I know it's not a fair comparison to make, I guess, but this neck here is my 64 Jag, and you can see how it's kind of got the similar sort of wear as this one here. This area, not so much well done, but I could probably maybe take this back a little bit more. So after the whole process I just went through with the sanding and the steel wool dyeing and everything, it's a bit black, or it's a bit too dark, it's a bit grey. I wanted a bit more of a wood sort of tone. I'd read that steel wool and vinegar made a good stain, but I think it's just a bit of the wrong sort of vibe. It's cool for putting those black bits in, which you can see here on the one on the right, which is the actual vintage neck. You can see some of that black grime. So I think using a mixture of the steel wool stuff with a proper wood dye might be a good approach in the future. After the finishing of the refret, I actually go back and use some wood stain to make it look a little bit better, and I'm a lot more happy with the results, but we'll have to get back to that after the rest of the refretting process. So here I'm just further aging the neck using a furniture texture just to darken the white dots on the fretboard here, just wiping it on and then quickly wiping it off with my thumb, and it's changed the color to a slight browner sort of vibe. So after 6 weeks, I think 6 weeks or 4 weeks, I've got my fret saw to do the fret depths and widths, because they were the wrong size after I sanded them down. So that's from StewMac, and I've made this little jig with a piece of cardboard here and sticky tape to make sure that I just go the right depth as opposed to too far or too shallow, I guess. I'm going to go through all of these using some super glue and rosewood dust to fill in any chips along the fretboard that may happen when using this or that were left over from when I did the pull out. So what I'm noticing is the original fret tang width was very narrow compared to this new wire, so I'm having to go kind of slow to start widening it. Finding it easier to go through like twice with the non-cardboard one and then checking the depth with the cardboard one after using the one without cardboard, if that makes sense. If I can see it kind of moving around a bit, or if it's completely flush, I know it's deep enough. So the first stroke is always proving to be the hardest because I guess the saw is wider than the fret slot, so it's proving a little bit difficult. But once I've done a couple, it eases up a little bit and I can go a bit softer and get the right depth. Just to give you a small idea of what it looks like with the cardboard, you can see it's rubbling along the edge, so I know that this fret slot is done, or like the one before it. So I do a couple of passes with the normal saw, and then I do a couple of passes with the cardboard saw. Sometimes the edges don't go as deep as the middle, I guess, because you don't pass them as much. So you really got to make sure you get all the way to the edge, otherwise you have frets at the end popping up. You don't want that. A clamp would be nice to have this clamp down, I think. This thing is alright, but it's not very useful for doing every single fret, so like something to clamp it down to the table would be quite handy, I think. But otherwise, this thing's doing good work, and I can't really complain, apart from the fact that it took like 6 weeks to get here. I'll see you soon. So I just finished all the slots on the neck. They're all the right depth and width now. This is probably the last refret this particular neck can have because of how much I had to sand off the end here. We've actually started going into the maple a little bit. So just to smooth out all of the little bumps that have occurred on some of the frets from the fret saw here, I'm just going to quickly go over it with 400 grit sandpaper, just really lightly, not to make any more depth, but just to clean up the top. Sorry for not letting you be there for the first 4. I had so much trouble with the first one. After I got the first one in, I was just too keen to keep going. So up to the re-fretting, I guess, or the fretting putting in part of the job. So I've done 4. I've screwed up a whole bunch of the first fret a bunch of times. So what I've figured out is that you really need to radius it like overly much, so like over radius it, so that when you put it into the fret slot, there's a big gap in the middle, so that when it's down here like this, there's a gap between the fretboard and the middle of the fret wire, and then you put the 2 ends in, hammer them in, like small tap and then a big tap in the middle, and that seems to be doing a better job than using it when it's already correctly radiused or if it's straight. If I do it when it's straight or correctly radiused, for some reason the ends pop out when I try and hammer in one side, so I'll hammer in one side and the other end will pop out, or if I hammer in this side I'll do this sort of thing. So yeah, that's what seems to be working for me. If you have any tips, let me know. These StewMac super glue come with these tiny little nozzles, which are kind of helpful. So you put the nozzle on top of the other nozzle. You have this little huge wick here, and they even give you this small little pin to clean out your nozzle. So I'm just going to put a small thin strip of super glue in the slot, put the fret wire in the slot, and then hammer in the side and then the middle. Light tapping the sides. So you can see most of it's in now, and I'm just going to hammer the middle. seated fret. And then all you have to do is get your cutters. You come in here. I'm doing it slightly angled because I like them a bit more beveled than most. And it's going to start the job for me when I have to come file down the ends. Flip it around, and I'm going to cut the 45-degree angle on here as well. God, this is a pretty awkward angle to do this. You see the fret is in. Cool, so I just got to do all these rest ones, and then I'll get on to the next part of doing the edges. There is a bit of spillage of super glue onto the wood. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm just using some sandpaper and a razor blade to get rid of that mess. So here you can see me bending the fret wire, just using the table and some human strength to bend the wire into a rough radius. Remember, over radius, not 7 1/4, like way more, leaving a gap between the fretboard and the wire so you can hammer in the sides, and then to a big hammer in the middle to flatten it all out. So I've been going along. Some things I've noticed, I guess, is it's definitely best hammering in the sides first and then the middle. Always make sure your fret slot is clean before you go ahead and do it. Don't overdo the super glue, because then you'll end up with super glue going everywhere. You can see a bit of a spillage here and stuff that I'll have to clean up. And it doesn't really matter what angle you cut this on, it kind of does the same thing. So I think straight on is better, because then there will be less filing along the sides here. Rounding over the edges isn't too hard with a file, so that should kind of work. What else is there? Besides that, it's all going all right. There's a few frets that have like slightly raised sides, which won't look the prettiest, but I'll be able to do fret leveling and fix that up. So yeah. People definitely make this look easier on YouTube, and when you go get your guitar refret from a professional. It is really hard. So we're doing all right here. We're going to have to fill up some of the slots here. I went too deep, which is kind of interesting. I thought I'd gone too shallow, but generally speaking, all of them are seated pretty well. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays at the end and see if it's actually all done its job. I'm just going to finish up doing the last couple, and I'll see you shortly. To get a rough idea of how much, it's kind of funny, I have to keep bending down, but I don't have multiple cameras, and I've just got to use the one phone on a book stand. In terms of how much fret wire I've used, it's three pieces from StewMax. I don't know what length they come in, but whatever their standard length of wire is. I think I ordered 9 or something, but this has only taken 3 of them, so I think I'll be able to do 2 or 3 guitars with it. So I've just cut out the next 3 frets. I think it's helpful cutting off the ends as you're going, so they don't get stuck in your hand as you're holding them down. But if you had some sort of vise or something that you could keep your neck in while doing it, it would be a lot more helpful. So I'm just going to finish off these last ones, and I'll be back in a second. Seated. Just rubbing my fingers down the sides after putting the super glue in the slot, and you can see it's filling up the nut slot. No, it's not the nut slot, the fret slot, which is quite exciting. And then I'll just go over with some sandpaper, and it should look pretty good. Alright, so it turns out it's easier to deal with the fret ends by using some sandpaper in my hand to do it this way, just to get rid of any excess fret end off the side here. And then to do the slight bevel inwards to start it off, using the radius beam is doing a bit of a better job. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm going to start the leveling process on the top. Cool. Since I've refinished the neck, it doesn't matter as much, but if you were worried about that sort of thing, about the sandpaper touching too much of the neck, you can always use some masking tape, which is probably what I should have done, but you know, you forget everything the first time you try and do something, so. So I'm just going until I can barely feel the fret ends, because I can get the rest of it with a file. And I'm not pushing very hard with the sandpaper either, so I don't hit too much of the rosewood. I think a block would be better, but I don't have one, so here we are. Alright, so they're flat, and now I'm just going to round them over a little bit with this thing. I don't know if you can tell, but they're starting to look like frets, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I've gotten rid of the fret ends, and I'm just doing slight rounding over the top, just to start that process, and then we'll go from there. So this is the fretboard in its current state. All the frets are in. We've still got some slight super glue debris that I'll clean up in a second, but you can see that all along here our frets are flush with the end. I still got to do the filling of the rosewood and stuff, and you can see that the tops of them are slightly beveled in, easily for me to work on later to get nice and ovaled, hopefully. See how it goes. Move, perfect. And then I'm just getting a razor blade and just scraping a little bit. You might be getting like a small amount of wood, but I don't really mind, as long as it's going to look better without all the marks. You can see I'm already getting rid of all of that super glue staining in there. Let's do this one here, so you'll be able to see. The shaky handheld camera strikes again. I think I'm doing this video more for me than for anyone else, really. It's just like to document the first time I ever do this. Just to remember all my stupid mistakes and what worked and what didn't. So to get rid of all that crap, you should see that we've got a whole lot less super glue stain. So I've cleaned up all the super glue, and if we can see here, I don't know how accurate you can see, there's just a touch of relief because I had the truss rod completely disengaged, and now that the frets are in as well, it adds just a tiny bit of relief with all the pressure from the frets. So I'm just going to tighten the truss rod just a little, just to get it flat, and then I'm going to start leveling the frets. So I've got the neck straight now, so I just tightened the truss rod just a little bit. It's completely dead straight, which is fantastic, because before you had to really crank it to get straight, and it wouldn't even be straight because it would have the hump over here, and then it would, it was all over the place. So the neck is good. The frets, I don't know. So now that it's straight, I'm just going to go over it with the 400 grit 7¼ inch radius. Some people don't think you need to really level frets, and you should just like spot level, except with my hammering technique that is not very good, there are some frets that aren't 100% seated, so there are going to be some anomalies. So I'm just going to maybe go through, hammer in any loose fret that I can find and that work. Some of them just won't hammer in for whatever reason. And then do this with the sandpaper, and then check it with a fret rocker and go from there with like marker and stuff. So we'll see what happens. I can see why people tell you to get rid of your guitar pickups when you do this. There's so much metal that comes off. Alright, just going to go grab a permanent marker. Okay, so I've finished up all the sides on both sides in terms of filling them with the rosewood dust, and then I've also done a couple of passes with the fret leveler just to get rid of any of the surface dents from the hammer or whatever anomalies. And now I've marked them all, and I'm just going to go over and see if there's any like obvious high frets, and then after that I'm going to tape up the board and then use a fret rocker and make sure that everything's level, and then I'll get to crowning and see how that goes. So I'm just going to keep going until all the black's gone, so that it's like roughly level. Okay. We've got a few high spots here and there. I might just keep going just a little bit more and then tape up the board and do what I said earlier. Pushing up against the fret, getting the razor blade, coming in here, cutting along, peeling that back, and then wrapping them around. Nice, nice and neat. Hope you saw that. I should really have done this. I should really have done this before I did the original, the first pass through, because the specks of metal get all over the rosewood. I don't know if it's like damaging or whatnot. I think I was just overly excited, so I rushed it a little bit. But now that I'm doing this, it makes more sense to do this straight away than to wait. Yeah, so don't do as I do, and take your time. Yeah. I've taped it up. I've taped up all the frets and the back and the sides, only so you can just get to the fret ends for when I do the rounding of the edges. So everything's all done. That took a while. So it's kind of helpful though, because since the masking tape's this thick, you can kind of use one piece for multiple frets, like for the end ones, because they're so thin. But it is a bit crafty. I would highly recommend a razor blade. That made it a lot easier. So I'll just put texture on them again, and I'm just going to go over, because there's still some bits that are not getting touched. I might actually show you. So as you can see, there's areas where the leveling beam's not hitting, which means that they're lower than the rest of the areas of the neck. But it's looking generally alright. There's another high bit here. But I'm just going to do this a couple of times until it's all nice and flat. This should be the last time. So as you can see, it's permanent marked, all of them. And then when this leveling beam goes over the top, I can't do these two hands. Like these two are level now. There's no black, no black, no black, no black, no black. And then I think maybe down here, this one has black. So maybe I just need to do a bit more down here. But yeah, looking pretty good. So now that I think they're all roughly level, I'm just going to go through with a fret rocker and find any high spots and mark them off with permanent marker. Where it's thin is where it's not, it's too shallow. So here's the taller than here. So I think once I get it all thick, it should be level. But it's getting there. So I was wondering why it was taking so long. It's because I was using the the 400 grit sandpaper instead of the 220 grit sandpaper. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, it's too funny. So we're going to keep going with the 220. Maybe it will be a little quicker. Alright, so it turns out my fret level was actually warped. So I got a different one, one that I've used before, and everything's level. So I've just marked everything again. So I probably lost a little bit of height because of that stupid warped fret level. Yeah, so I've marked everything again with a marker, and now I'm going to use the Z file to crown it. So this is a cool one. It's got one side which is long, one side that's short. So you just go across that way and then flip it to do the other side. So the reason I've got the marker there is so that I can see it get thinner and thinner. When it's just a faint thin line, I'm done. So let's see how that goes. So you can already see it getting thinner. So I just go a little bit more than that and we should be good. Alright, I've done the first fret, so if you can see, it's just the faintest line remaining. Cool, so I'm just going to do that to all the other frets. and then I will do the fret ends with a different file. Cool. Let's see what's going on here. Thin lines all the way down, and then thick lines. So far, I'm enjoying the process. It's pretty rewarding, to be honest, especially all the little tiny nuances. But if you're not keen on spending 20 plus hours, I probably wouldn't recommend doing it. This Z file is amazing. Look at this. There's the thinnest line ever. The crown is going to be so nice. It is a lot of manual labor though, but this thing is fantastic. Slowly working out whether it's better to have bought all this stuff or whether it's better just to take it to a professional. But we've done a lot of the frets. They're all looking real nice. We've just got, what's that, 5 left? So I found this block which would have been helpful earlier. I'm going to use that just to get rid of any of the leftover sharpness. There isn't much, I can't really feel any, so the sandpaper did its job before. And then with this file, there's a fret end file. It's basically a square. There we go. So it's basically a little, where is the camera? It's basically a little square. And I'm just gonna go around to dome them over this way. And then I'm also gonna try and go over the top to try and get that nice dome end. The goal is to get it a bit rounded, so you can see that's rounded now, as opposed to flat on. I'm going to take some photos and then throw them up, because that might be a little easier to see. So those ones are designed, I guess. Those ones are meant to get rid of the, oh my god, my camera, the sharp bit against the wood. And then, so I normally just do, I think, from what has been working, I'm just doing 3 passes. So I'm just going, I'll do it on this one. So you got 1, 2, 3, and that seems to get rid of the corner. And then do it the other side. 1, 2, 3. Doing it that way I feel uncoordinated as all hell, but that's fine. And then once you've done that, I'm just coming around and making a dome-like shape at the end. Not so much getting rid of length, just kind of making the end a ball, as opposed to a square with rounded edges. A lot of guitar makers always do the squared fret ends with round edges, which they've probably just done 1, 2, which is fine. But for some reason my hands are quite sensitive, and I prefer the knob-like ball end, I guess. So I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making it feel like what I've experienced on the guitars I like. So it's kind of the goal. They might not look as pretty as what you've probably seen on other guitars, but you can definitely see the difference. So like, if I can get in focus at any point in my life. So like this one here, you can see is square, and then if we come back over here, you can see how this one's a little bit more domed. My ones aren't that pretty, but I think once I sand them up and everything, they'll look like little domes, which is awesome. Cool, so I've finished doing the sides of all of them, all the fret ends. They're little ball ends, hopefully you can tell, see? So you've got some ball ends here, and you've got some ball ends over here. To be honest, I'm pretty chuffed so far. So that's all of them done, so it feels lovely up and down. So now I'm just going to go over the sides and the frets individually with some micro mesh. I think I'm going to do like 1/500 to, I'm going to do every second one, I think, just to alleviate some of the, the manual work I'll have to do. But let's see how that turns out. And then I'll take all the tape off afterwards. It looks like a guitar neck, and the frets look pretty good. It's just whether or not they're level and whether or not they're gonna work. Yeah, cool. Okay, so after leaving this for a day after oiling it, it's looking pretty good. However, I've noticed that there's more super glue marks that I haven't got rid of, so I'm gonna have to use my trusty razor blade to get rid of some more of those marks. And I've also noticed that one of the frets is high, so I'm going to use this to level just the one fret and then re-crown it with the file and then go over them with the micro mesh pads again. Knowing the fact that it's my first time, I bet you when I put this together something will not work. But at the moment it's looking pretty nice. These are the frets I've done. I don't know if you can tell how shiny they are. And these are the frets I haven't done. A little bit less shiny. You can see on the left there the ones I've done, the ones on the right here, if my finger can get in frame, I have not done, including this one. So you can kind of see. You can see this sort of stuff here is what would cause some of that noise when you bend, whereas this one over here has none of it. So I've just realized that I might need a new nut. I don't know why I didn't think about this. I bought the stuff for a new nut, so I have the bone and all the nut files. But I'm thinking, because I didn't take the nut off when I did all the sanding, the nut's already going to be quite, like, a little bit higher than the rest of the fretboard. And these frets are quite low to begin with, so I'm thinking maybe, just for trying out the guitar to see if it actually functions, we might be able to get away with just using the old nut. I still need to get some wood dye to make this look a little better. It's a little bit too worn. I want it to be a little bit more like this color in here, across the whole of here. So I might just get some like ambery wood dye and see if that works, but it's all a work in progress. So this is the nut situation we're talking about. As you can see, it's already a little bit higher than the fret, so maybe we could be alright. I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so now that that's all done, the aim of the game is to put the old neck that belongs to this guitar back on this guitar and see if it works. So at the moment it's got a 64 like Duosonic or Mustang. I think it's a Mustang neck, oh my lord, a Mustang neck on from the 60s. This neck's fine and I really like it. It's shorter. It's got the A width nut as opposed to the B width nut, so you can see one's quite significantly more chunky. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it fits on and everything works, and this old nut allows us to play just for a little bit, and then maybe I'll make a new one. We'll see how we go. So the whole process has taken around 30 to 40 hours. A lot of that's due to me ruining other parts of it by doing another thing, like sanding the sides and then scuffing the frets and having to re-crown again and all that sort of mumbo jumbo. So I reckon next time it would probably take maybe half as much time, just with the experience. So I can see how people get this sort of stuff done quicker, but it isn't an easy job. So I think what they charge you is justifiable. But if you are interested in giving it a go yourself, it's definitely worthwhile. Like if you do at least 2 guitars, you get your money's worth. It's a very rewarding process, and you can definitely tweak all aspects of your guitar to your preferences, which is really cool. Here I'm just taking the tuners off the current neck, and then I'm going to put these onto the reissue neck. So I've got the new refretted neck on to the guitar. I'm not sure which neck I will want on this guitar, but it shouldn't make too much difference having them not, the ferrule's not on here yet. Just a little tip, if you pre-bend the string around the pole here and then you pull out this way, pull away from the guitar, as you wind. It means that you don't have to worry about it coming kind of back at you, which is kind of nice, and then it just comes on really nicely, like so. So just looking for a few winds around the poles here. Alright, so I've tuned it up to pitch. The action's like half a mil too high because I've taken so much wood off the thing. I'm going to actually need to shim it a little bit more, but as you can see, it's all good. So, I mean, currently we're sitting at, what is it? About 1.75 millimeters on the 12th fret and 1.5 on the high E, which is still low, but it's, you know, it could be better. So let's see if it works. Seems to be working. There's like no buzz. So far, so good. Alright, I'm going to shim the neck a little bit and deal with the relief and find out if any of the frets have that roughness. But so far, we're all good. It's the 12th fret. For anyone interested on that other neck, it's an October 64 A width, and I think that 8 means Mustang, so yeah, that's what this neck is from. It's got some lovely flaming in it. It was a lovely find on Reverb. Okay, so I've tightened the truss rod a bit, so the relief is like non-existent. I like the neck really, really straight. I've done that, and what else did I do? I sanded down the 12th, the 13th, and the 18th to make them less scratchy. And now I'm just going to go through each fret to see if there's any buzz. Perfect! Wait, need to see my face. Oh, this is the most exciting thing ever. Lovely. So I'm just going to go, I guess, plug this in, and see how we go from there. Currently looks like, and I'm not happy with it. So I got some water-based stain, some Northern Tallowood by this people, and I'm going to rub some of that on here, just a light amount, to see if we can kind of match some of the original colour. Oh, that's like, I need to put way more on.
Wow, it does nothing.
I've done a few coats of the stain and it looks a lot more natural and brown instead of black. I don't know if you can tell on the light, but there you go. I've also put the circle bushings back on the tuners because I'm going to keep this neck on the guitar. So while the tint is drying on the back here, trying to make up for all the grey I did, just rolling the fingerboard edges. So if we look over here, you can see that it's quite flat because of sanding down the board and stuff. So it's really flat. And then if you go up here to the 12th fret, you can see how I've already rolled it over here. Just a touch. So just to do this, I'm just using the edge of this little screwdriver here just to push down on it. Normally, people would sand the sides, which I did a bit of, and you can kind of see the fret here is well and truly rounded over. Perfect. So here we have it, the refinished neck. It's got a few coats of this on it and some beeswax to seal it in and everything. Looks pretty good. Looks kind of like what you'd see in the custom shop. I probably would have left it like this if I had all the stuff to do the refret and I wasn't waiting for the saw, but you know, it was just a fun little project. We've got our lovely little fret ends, all looking kind of good. We've got rolled fretboard edges, nothing rough going along, and it plays well. So success. It actually plays better than all my other guitars. So I don't know what happened, but we must have just got lucky the first time trying this, or just the sheer amount of hours I put into this. I wouldn't recommend doing this if you're not interested in learning how to do it, because it is very time consuming. It's probably taken around 30 plus hours to do this whole process, but we have a neck that looks amazing and plays amazing. It's a little bit thinner than what it was because of taking off that material towards the heel, but yeah, there you go. Thanks for watching.